Why are so many women going through a spiritual awakening? Why are we seeing a rise in things like astrology, crystals, tarot, and divination practices? Why are we seeing a rise in womb awakening and cyclical living and manifestation and living in sync with the moon? It's the rise of the divine feminine. So today we're going to be talking about the rise of the divine feminine and why women are starting to finally embrace the woo-woo. So if you're feeling this deep instinctual pull towards these kinds of things, you are not alone. The rise of the divine feminine is happening before our eyes. You can feel it. And in this video, we're going to dive deep into what the divine feminine is and how to actually reclaim it once again for yourself. So over the last few thousand years, the divine feminine has been suppressed, erased, marginalized, killed. The pendulum had swung so far in one direction to the wounded masculine that we lost touch with this essential, innate part of our being, especially as women. The divine feminine was systematically removed and erased from history, especially when it comes to religion. It was removed from biblical texts, and it was pretty much the Christian church and the Catholic church as to why the divine feminine was erased in the first place. It didn't fit the narrative that they wanted to tell. It didn't fit the story that they were trying to share. And so the divine feminine was systematically erased. Women lost touch with this natural part of themselves, and men too. It's been erased from history, but the pendulum always swings back the other way. So now we're starting to see the rise in the divine feminine once again, and this is why you're feeling this pull towards these sorts of things. And so I want to ensure you that if anyone tells you you're woo-woo, this is kind of an insult and a dig to your own natural divine feminine wisdom. But what exactly is the divine feminine? I like to describe the divine feminine as an eternal, loving mother energy. She's ever abundant. She's ever loving. She's not punishing. She's not judgmental. She's always looking out for you. She's everywhere. She's in the trees. She's in the grass. She's in the wind. She's in the mountains. She's in the bees and the flies and every element that you can imagine. She's within you. She's within me. She's within the words that we speak with love to each other. She is the embodiment of the physical. She gifts us with our nurturing energy, our creativity, abundance, our intuition, and of course a deep connection to nature. Historically, the divine feminine was worshipped and revered for thousands of years. Ancient religions, wisdom teachings, ancient mystery schools all taught how to live in harmony with the divine feminine, with her rhythms and her cycles of nature. She was seen as the source of all life, of fertility, and of cosmic balance. And think about how we've only ever really been shown the masculine way of living. For instance, now God is a man in the sky, and he gave birth to a son whose mother was a virgin, whose lover was a whore. Like, all of the divinity of the woman was completely and systematically removed from these biblical teachings. And let me tell you, these stories that have been removed from the Bible and other religious teachings have so much divine feminine wisdom, but they don't fit the narrative. The divine masculine is the mind, it's logic, it's data, and it's like the cosmic void. It's that place that we go to when we enter into meditation, the quietness. It's the place where we plant seeds of our intention. However, the divine feminine is like the cosmic womb. It's the place where all of those seeds in the mental, in the masculine, come to be birthed into creation. So everything that comes from that of the divine masculine has to be utilized and pushed through the divine feminine. So when we think of it this way, everything within our own world, everything that's physical, everything that we can see and experience and feel with our senses is that of the divine feminine creation. Your body, nature, money, your home, your relationships, everything in creation was birthed through this cosmic womb of the divine feminine. Think about how the masculine talks about things like manifestation. I'm using Joe Dispenza as an example here because it's all very mind focused. It's when you go into your mind and you plant that seed of intention, you float in the cosmic void and you visualize the future that you want. It's very much in the mind. But when you utilize and find balance with the divine feminine, you're also incorporating it into your physical body, in your physical form. So that's why why a lot of these manifestation techniques that work for the masculine don't necessarily work for the feminine. We need to use the elements, we need to use nature, we need to use crystals. We feel drawn to these things for a particular reason. And it's because things like just meditating don't always work for us. We have a natural way of being that we're kind of fighting against when we listen to these teachers who are only teaching from the masculine perspective. So all of us have been so focused on self-development over the past decade, right? And all we want to do is better ourselves. We want to develop our intuition and be more spiritual. But we have to also come out of the mind and bring it back into the physical. We need to embody it. We need to be in our bodies. We can be out in nature. We can utilize things like herbalism and ecstatic dance and toning with your voice. Like, getting into your body is how you're going to be able to bring these teachings into your physical reality, by actually living the life that you want, by finding more joy and more pleasure. The divine feminine is all about finding pleasure and living in joy and ease. It's not the system that we've been taught to live in, which is hustle and grind really hard until you're depleted. And then as a woman, most of the time you're forced to do everything else. When you go home, you have to be super mom, you have to be super wife, you have to be super girlfriend, you have to be everything to everyone, and you're burnt out. And that's not how the divine feminine operates. She wants to operate in a state of peace and harmony and bliss and nurturing and compassion and intuition. And by being all of these things to everyone, she's depleting herself of her own energy. So by doing things that bring you peace, by doing things that bring you more joy, allows you to be more in your beingness and find presence. And that's how you're going to be able to hear the divine feminine, how you're going to be able to embody that divine feminine. And it's a journey. So this is why women are having this spiritual awakening, and why they're being drawn to things like crystals and astrology and tarot and divination practices, to living in cycles with the moon and their womb. They're being called to incorporate more ceremony into their life. And it's funny how we're being called to this, yet it's so demonized in our culture. It's so looked down upon. It's so woo-woo and belittled. I wonder where that came from. Now, like I said earlier, goddess worship was the main belief system on the planet before religions began. This is referred to as neo-paganism, and I actually created a whole video on this topic and the witch wound and the witch trials, and how all of us women have this natural fear around expressing our own divine feminine, our own inner witch, because of all of this trauma that's happened to us as the religions, and specifically the Christian church and the Catholic church, all tried to push a specific narrative on us. This resulted in them killing millions of women across the planet, especially in Europe at that time. So a lot of us feel this call to explore our ancient wisdom that has been stripped from us. A lot of us feel like we don't have a culture, or like we don't know our culture, and that's because it was wiped out so long ago and it's been systematically erased from our society. But women are incredibly intuitive, so we have this natural knowing within us that, hey, I shouldn't be living like this. There's a better way for me. And so we're awakening to that. There's also this incredible book called Alphabet versus the Goddess. It's very dense. I listened to it on Audible. It took me a very long time to get through it because it was so dense. But it's very interesting, and it's an incredible theory about how, when we switched from pictures and symbols in terms of writing and reading and switched into written language, that's when we went from goddess worship to a god worship. So when we went from pictures and symbols, which is of the right side of the brain, which is the feminine, that took us out of our creative brain and our imaginative brain and switched us into our masculine brain with the written word, which is logic and analytics and data. So I recommend, if you're interested in the divine feminine and reclaiming this and learning about the history and its erasure, definitely go ahead and read this book. I can make some videos on the things I learned from it, but there's so much. It's such a dense book, but you're gonna love it. So as we now know, the rise of the patriarchal system, especially the rise of the church, systematically destroyed and erased all teachings, all beliefs, all practices of the divine feminine. Powerful female goddesses and priestesses were erased from history, Books and tablets and scrolls and all information regarding this was erased. People who held this knowledge were forced to convert and never speak about this kind of information, or they would be killed. And as we know, we have the European witch trials, which resulted in millions of women who held this knowledge or who embodied the divine feminine, who were connected to the earth, who were just even a little bit off, who were more introverted. They were killed. Anyone who raised any red flags to the church was killed. It did not fit the narrative. They wanted a very specific person to continue this narrative for them. And they really wanted people to live in fear of sharing this knowledge and living this knowledge because it was a threat to their narrative. And I just want to know what is hidden under Vatican City within that library, what kind of ancient texts are hidden under there, the things that they're hiding from us. Oof, I wish I could just know. Another super interesting conversation that I want to mention in this video that is taught in Alphabet versus the Goddess, it was something I'd never heard of before and it made so much sense, is how the devil, his image was created as kind of an amalgamation of all of these divine feminine symbols and colors and beliefs and practices all within this one being to look so terrifying that it forced people to be so afraid of these things that they lost their connection to them. Not to mention, we've been conditioned to be fearful of nature. We've become fearful to go out and touch plants or to eat plants or harvest our own food because what if it's poisonous or what if it's this or what if it's that? We become so disconnected from something that's so beautiful and it's a gift to us from the divine feminine herself. This is her embodiment. She's everywhere and she's here to support us, to give us breath, to give us air to breathe. She is everywhere. She's ever loving. She's ever abundant. She's everything we could ever need and she's right here. And yet we're told to be afraid of her. Not to say there aren't annoying things in nature. So like I said, women were killed in the millions for being in tune with the divine feminine. Still, after the church had tried to push its agenda, to push its narrative. And now women are collectively waking up to the idea that this narrative makes no sense. Women everywhere are starting to feel this call to connect back to their inherent wisdom, to their own intuition, to connect back to their bodies. We have become so disconnected from our bodies. Women are starting to live in sync with their cycle again, with their womb, to connect to their womb, to heal their womb after everything that it's been through for the last 100 years. It's been so demonized. And we've been made to believe that our periods and our menstrual cycles are these disgusting things that are repulsive and we should be ashamed about it. But it's actually so beautiful. It's such a divine process, and women are starting to realize that and connect back to it. Women are feeling this draw to go back to simpler times. I know so many people who say they want to live on a farm, to live in nature, to just have a little homestead and grow their own food. And this is why women are being so called back to these traditional ways of living. You may hear about people really embracing trad wives, and while that's kind of not the divine feminine aspect of what I'm talking about, they're just being called to a simpler way of life. And I understand that. They want to just be in presence and be with their partner and be with their kids and just be. And instead of doing all the time, do, to hustle, to grind, we've been so conditioned by the girl boss era that we have to be constantly grinding and giving up our friendships and giving up our family time or giving up our 20s or 30s just to grind and hustle to get to where we want to be and then do everything else, where there's a way to do both. You don't have to exert yourself to the extreme anymore. You can learn how to be magnetic and to embody your divine feminine to get the things that you want in life. You don't have to be in your masculine energy to achieve things. And many women are being drawn to things that are metaphysical and astrology and crystals, like I said, and herbalism, and just living more simple lives, to live out in nature, to be a mother, to be a caregiver, to be nurturing, to be compassionate. They want to eat the way their ancestors ate. They want to live the way their ancestors lived, because we're having this awakening to the divine feminine. Let me be clear that this is not a trend. This is an awakening. This is a spiritual awakening. The reason that so many women are being drawn to these ancient practices is because it was taken from you. And on some level, you are remembering this. You've been told to forget, but your ancestors have been practicing this way of life for thousands of years. It is natural and it's innate and it's an intuitive hit that you're having within you to start to live as your ancestors once did. Women are starting to acknowledge that success does not need to be chased after. I love to use the example as an archer for the divine feminine and the divine masculine in their way of achieving a certain goal. So, the way that in society we have only been taught is going to work is that of the masculine, by being directed, by taking charge, by going for what you want, being directed, and it's charging towards that target. Whereas the divine feminine is the target. She is magnetic. She is in her beingness. She knows what she wants and she attracts it to her. What she'll do is she will set her sights on something and she will kind of manipulate the wind around her in order to make it come to her. But the way she's going to get success is being at the right place at the right time, by being in pleasure and joy and in her beingness, by being present. And we're so in our minds all the time that we neglect our bodies and our hearts, which are that of the feminine. This is the masculine. By drifting down into your body once again, by embodying the feminine, by embodying your own beingness, this is how you're going to start to achieve the things that you want through a much easier way that works for you. By following both our joy and our bliss, women are finding a new way to live that is both empowering and fulfilling. Men, on the other hand, are finding this shift very difficult to navigate. The systems in which they've relied on for their entire lives, and that's ingrained within them for the past 1,000 years. Let's not go back to the whole Roman Empire thing that they all think about every single day, which is wild in itself. But they're finding this shift very challenging because it's crumbling their worldview. And the thing is, on a subconscious level, they are aware of this. On a conscious level, they may not be. What's going to happen is they're going to have to rise up to meet us where we are in our own divine feminine essence by embodying their own divine feminine. They are so far into their wounded masculine, or even just in their divine masculine, but they have to learn how to be in balance again. Women are also so far in their masculine energy, and it's time to bring it back. They need to rise to meet us where we are, or their systems are going to keep crumbling. And they are. I guarantee if you have this conversation with any of your men, most of them are going to be incredibly triggered by the concept of the divine feminine or women rising into their power. They're going to be incredibly triggered, and they may make you feel belittled for the things that you're being drawn to. It is very belittling when men say that what we are interested in is woo-woo, because it's a sacred part of ourselves. It's this innate inner knowing that we know is our own truth. It's our own divinity that they, quite frankly, have suppressed within us. So we feel this need to express it, to explore it. But just know that they too will have to balance out their own divine feminine energy at some point in order to match you and to meet you where you are. By embracing the divine feminine, we are stepping into a new way of being. It's the new paradigm. It's the new earth. It's the golden age. It's the age of Aquarius. It's this age of enlightenment where we are actually living from our heart centers. And when we make this shift from our mind to our hearts, we quite literally create a new timeline for us and our world. A world of more peace, a world of more joy, a world of more beingness, of more fulfillment, of more presence. And I think that's what we all really want. Women are stepping into their power, but it's a power that's coming from within. It's not a power that's coming from the external world. It's not about dominating or competing. It's about being true to yourself and your natural gifts, your natural divine feminine essence, your natural beingness, your natural intuitive gifts. And as women, as we continue to embrace this awakening within us, we really are contributing to the healing and the transformation of our world. So if you're feeling more called to explore your spirituality, to explore metaphysics, to explore your connection with nature, just know that you are in the right place. You are doing the right thing. You are a part of a larger movement. You are answering that call of the divine feminine, and together we're all creating a more loving, more compassionate, more peaceful world. I post a lot of videos on divine feminine awakening and reclamation and spiritual knowledge and metaphysical things. We always have fun, deep chats over here. So go ahead, subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.